let's say people are working in any popular B2C company, they try to be in the same segment. For you personally, how that transition have been?
B2C, B2B, it's a very similar recipe. B2C and B2B is in your career, you're adaptable to different situations.
What are those traits that helps you navigate so fast and take better decisions in the solutioning part?
Being extremely clear and thorough as to why we're doing what we're doing. But when a designer actually goes into the crux of the solution, a lot of times through experience and through validation, it becomes very evident that that's not the case. That's not the solution at all.
Are there any use cases Yubi is leveraging AI to do it? Welcome to another episode. Today I'm excited to host Arpith Scindhia, as the Director of Design at Yubi, a seasoned design leader with expertise in B2B Fintech, debt finance, and data-driven product experiences. At Yubi, Arpith leads design across multiple product charters, including Yubi's credit stack, Spocto collections stack, and Aspero fixed income platforms. His work focuses on creating seamless financial experiences that go beyond just information, empowering users through intuitive and scalable design. Before Yubi, Arpith held key decision roles at Walmart Global Tech, InMobi, Upskillist, where he played crucial part in shaping user experiences at scale, driving accessibility, and leading strategic design initiatives. In this episode, we dive into the challenges of transitioning from B2C to B2B as a design leader, navigating the shift from Aspero's fixed return focuses to Yubi's large-scale credit ecosystem, how products in debt finance and banking are designed to empower users beyond just presenting information, the complexities of maintaining a design system for Yubi's data-heavy, visualization-rich products, and how AI is leveraged across Yubi's product for risk assessment, research, and client analytics. If you are interested in fintech design, scaling design system, and the evolving role of AI in financial platforms, this episode is packed with full of insights. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and YouTube. Your support helps us bring in more insightful conversation with industry leaders. Let's jump in and hear from Arpith. Hey Arpith, thanks for joining today. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Darshan. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here, and thanks for having me.
Great. Arpith, lots of designers have this mindset of being in a one domain particularly. Uh, I would say not just a domain, sometimes it's a market segment also, right? What do I mean by that is, let's say people are working in any popular B2C companies, right? They try to be in the same segment. If they are working in a B2C segment or B2B, whatever, they try to be in the same only, right? For a longer period of time. You have been working with Flipkart earlier, InMobi, Walmart, and right now you are working with Yubi, right? As I said earlier, it's a B2C and now it's a B2B in the credit and lending space, of course. For you personally, how that transition have been, and also what are the pros that you have identified that every single designer should also look at?
Yeah, I mean, so like you said, I started early in my career. It was a lot of B2Cs, Flipkart. Primarily, that was a pretty long tenure, and Flipkart at that point of time was pretty popular, right? And everyone wanted to get into
Hyper
a
growth stage.
hyper growth stage, startup, well known. Everyone knows about it, battling the big guns of the world. So it was a company that was also sort of creating a sort of culture, right? And that culture is something that eventually started getting consumed by other startups around, right?
Correct.
And that became like a benchmark setter. So with this particular company itself, like Flipkart, they paid the path for a lot of startups that came in, both from a B2B and a B2C segment.
Personally, I feel it's a Indian paper mafia sort of a game.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, now it's a bigger competition, but at that point of time, it was very very much focused on to what Flipkart used to give. So they set up really good cultures. They had people from all over the country. In fact, some people were from outside other countries as well. So with a lot of this flux of different cultures from the country, they wanted to build a brand that is going to be culturally focused, where people felt they're motivated to do great things, and it's very hyper competitive as well.
Right.
And that sort of became like like a recipe for every other startup around, right? And today, after like 12 and a half years later, you see a very similar trend in a lot of these companies. So B2C, B2B, it's a very similar recipe. A lot of companies want to create an ecosystem that is very cultural driven, has high growth for any individual that is working in any sort of pod, and also a point where it feels that they belong somewhere, right? Um, Keeping all of this from a B2C and B2B, for me, I didn't really, at that point of time, I didn't really care, right? I want to work in a B2C company, I want to work in a B2B company, and none of these sort of thoughts ever emerged, right?
Right.
For me, it was more like, which is more exciting and what is more exciting, right? And that happens once you get exposed to very different kind of problems, and that could be problems arising from a B2C company or from a B2B company. Now a lot of this problem seems to be a very solved case, right?
Okay.
um,
What do you mean by that solved case?
like e-commerce is pretty much solved, right,
Aha,
to a very
true.
large extent, right?
Correct.
Sure, there are emerging markets outside of India who are, trying to achieve what we have done in India. But most of the companies in India, they're
The
resolving the same
benchmark is
problem.
almost set.
Almost set, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not the case in B2B, right?
Okay.
In B2B, every service that you look at it today, be it from a corporate standpoint, be it from a financial standpoint, be it technologies, be it any sort of product that you look at, which potentially eases your workflow if you're working in a company. Those problems are very, very unique. Those problems are emerging every single day, and those are fresh, right?
Correct.
Which means that there is, for a lot of cases, there aren't a problem that is solved already where you can reference out and you can say, okay, I'll make a little tweak here and something else happens,
There
right?
is no benchmark at
There's no
all.
benchmark, and in some cases there is, in a lot of cases there aren't. In UB especially, we are probably the benchmark setters. We're trying to get into a space where you wouldn't find many at all, especially in the kind of scale that we are looking at. And UB is a group of companies who have multiple different problems and segments that we're targeting.
Yeah.
So we don't have a reference point, right? So it becomes even more exciting, right? So end of the day, I think the transition from a B2C and a B2B, more than being inclined towards the type of industry, I think you should probably be inclined towards kind of problems that exist and to what degree that excites you. And for me, my journey was in a similar fashion. Flipkart, very exciting time, you know, biggest company, e-commerce, all of that, new things you're doing for the first time. Then InMobi happened. InMobi is a B2B company, and
Yeah.
that's also a very different problem. We have very different markets that we are trying to target, and it's a true-blood Indian company, right? So in the global scales, that's a very different challenge. That's a very different problem. And Walmart, again, it's a B2C brand, and that had its own challenges because I think to a large degree Walmart was catching up to what we had already accomplished in India,
Right.
right?
Correct.
Because those were emerging markets in Canada, especially in Mexico. So that was a very different challenge. But I think in UB, with all said and done, it's a it's a huge different market. It's a huge different set of constraints that you'll have to work with, the kind of customers that you'll have to deal with. um, and yeah, and it's a big thing to one, look at the problem, another to solve it.
Right.
And the journey itself is very exciting. So yeah.
Makes sense. But in order to focus on a one segment, let's say B2C, which you rightly put it as it's already solved in e-commerce. But still, there are a couple of back office challenges. There are a couple of enhancement challenges which is yet to be solved,
Hmm.
even in the same segment, and for which they also need designers to work on the solution part. They also need product managers to work on the
Yeah.
identifying the opportunities also. And there are people who also want to stay longer for those kind of a problem statements.
Yeah.
From you, from your perspective personally, what do you think will be the cons in the longer run for
Hmm.
staying with that kind of a problem statement for a longer run, let's say?
Yeah.
uh, as you said, from your experience, I felt like you always want fresh problem statement to work on. It basically keeps you exciting always,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
but that might not be the direction for all the designers.
Sure.
Sometimes designers also want impact,
Hmm.
but they also want to work on the critical problem at the ground level, let's say, right?
Yeah.
So what are the cons that you see in that side also from your experience so far?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, Walmart is a great example. It's a,
Yeah,
Fortune 1 company. It's pretty big. It's pretty large. They have operations which is global and it's very large scale. So you have very large teams as well that work on
correct.
it, right?
Yeah.
So when you have large teams, and you have a product that is hitting saturation at certain point, right? And you can see a certain saturation hitting threshold, right?
Hmm.
Saying, okay, let's 2 years later, you're going to stagnate the way products are built, and you're going to try to figure out new arenas, new avenues where you can expand the offerings that you have, which then becomes a very niche segment,
Hmm.
right? If you want to buy a shoes today versus buying it on Amazon or Walmart or Flipkart or whatever, it's pretty much the same journey.
Correct.
How convenient or how easy do you make the transaction? That is probably the problems that they're trying to tackle. Be it payments, be it exploration, or be it using Gen AI, for example, right?
Right.
Those sort of topics would be something that a lot of these companies or brands would be looking into, and those could be very exciting for designers to look at, right?
Hmm.
um, but at a large scale, when you are, let's say, in one organization or in a similar industry for a very long time, the bucket list of innovations that you can create, right,
Hmm.
starts getting, one, already being done by your competitors,
Okay.
right? um, Second, because you have a larger team and a company of that sort, not every important, impactful work comes to you, right?
Right. So the opportunity to create impact might
Might
also
diminish, right?
diminish. Yeah.
And it's a diminishing factor. The greater impact, the greater problems, the best of those things goes to, um, cannot be sort of handed out to everyone,
Hmm.
and that's a reality. And some people get the opportunity, some people don't get. Stick around for longer, eventually you might get it, but that's more like you're trying to sort of discount your own career at a certain point.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to this. I mean,
At some extent, I guess it also depends on the kind of organization you are in.
yeah,
As you rightly put earlier, that in the Flipkart, at the stage you were in, that was the hyper growth stage. So every single project that you get chance to work on is the kind of opportunity for
yeah,
you, right? Because all the single problem statement comes your way is unique in nature.
yeah,
If you are in that particular stage in a company, it's a blessing. You don't even need to step out to find another problem statement.
yeah. And you wouldn't ever talk about bandwidth. And there's something that I've noticed in my own career, right? When when your work environment is like that, where it is
Hmm.
like hyper focused, hyper productivity,
Yeah.
velocity becomes a key. There's so many things to do, but you don't have so many people to do it. But then at the same time, you're very excited to do it, right? So you
Hmm.
never talk about bandwidth. You never talk about ki I only have 8 hours or I only have 9 hours. That motivation to create impact and value automatically sets you up to do more and more, and
Definitely.
those opportunities are there. While I'm giving you very context here, because in my experience as well, in let's say in Flipkart, or even Walmart to a certain degree, when organizations become larger,
Hmm.
you have processes set in place, you have cadences, you have tedious approval process, review process. Things take a lot more time,
Right.
right, to see life than, let's say, a little bit on a smaller focus
Smaller
teams
scale
and
startup or
lean startups and
yeah.
things like that. With that, your velocity doesn't really come into the picture, right?
Correct.
In that environment, you would actually talk about bandwidth.
Hmm.
Say, okay, this will take 2 sprints or this will take 3 sprints. Let me estimate how much this will take.
Yeah.
But in a hyper focused, hyper velocity, teams, you don't talk about bandwidth. You just talk about, I know you wanted this yesterday.
Yeah.
I would love to give it to you yesterday. So
Yeah.
let me do as fast as, because all of us has the same vision, right? We're
and
not doing
ev-
it
and
because,
everyone wants to see that thing go live as soon as
yeah,
possible.
yeah. right? I want to see impact. I want to see the business impact,
Correct.
right? You're also part of those conversations.
Correct.
Hey,
Correct.
how much are you getting?
Yeah.
Can my designs help you sell this better?
Mm.
Those are the conversations that are going to, get away with this topic of bandwidth. I don't have enough time. These sort of sure at a large perspective from over the past 12 years, I've seen the shift where even today, smaller organizations, startups talk about this
Yeah.
bandwidth and time crunch, and I can give it to you only after 5 days. These sort of things, but that's a sort of shift that has taken some time, right? 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I don't remember myself saying that. I don't hear. I've never seen my peers say all of this. I've never seen my stakeholders talk about bandwidth. None of this, right? So it used to be like, okay, we have a vision, we have a mission. Let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Right? We want to see the outcome, and outcome is extremely important.
Mhm.
And that's a mindset that you'll have to inculcate in cultures of teams that you're building
Yeah.
in any organization that you work in. And yeah, it sort of starts with everyone around.
No, definitely. I think you said one important word in the conversation is that that's a mindset.
Yeah,
It's not about a process. It's not about working hours or anything like that.
yeah,
It's all about mindset of a
yeah.
team. Arpit, I think since you mentioned about the hyper growth mindset, right? And I believe in a way what Yubi have achieved in a very short span of a time, in couple of years to achieve this massive success, definitely requires the same sort of a mindset in each and every team member.
Yeah,
You have been working with UB for a while now, and you have got chance to work with Aspero, which is a fixed return financial instrument, and then there's a other large scale credit ecosystem products of UB,
yeah.
right? Which you are also responsible for. Uh, at the same time, being a design leader to solve for this product suits altogether requires a
Mm,
lots of jumping from here and there and things like that.
yeah.
What are those traits that helps you navigate so fast and take better decisions in the solutioning part?
I mean, just talking about it is also, pretty hectic. I think, and to be very honest, this a lot of my team members have asked me the same question, and I've
Hmm.
tried to introspect as to what it means and why I'm able to do this. I think, and I don't think I'm doing, the best job at it. I'm sure like there's a lot of, cases where I'm slacking off in terms of context switching, and we call that context switching between
Correct.
different organizations that you're working in. And I have, I'm luckily blessed with a really good team,
Hmm.
and they do a lot of heavy lifting for me, right? It becomes very easy for me to shift my focus from one organization to another organization, um, because the team sort of helps me, onboard and get into the perspective a lot more easier. I think hats off to that. But largely, the way I started with UB is I was managing the product design teams for one of the company of UB group called Spocto,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
how I joined the organization and I started leading designs over there. Then I was able to sort of figure out solutions to problems and strategize and collaborate and commit to a certain outcome much early on in the journey itself. And we're a very
Hmm.
small team, the Spocto design team, and then uh,
So was that the first product of UB?
no. So UB, to give you some overview, UB Group is
Hmm.
a group of companies.
Right.
So you have the UB as a main product, which is facilitating your lending and borrowing.
Hmm.
And couple of years ago, they acquired a collections company called Spocto,
Right.
and they do collections. With, for example, if you have an EMI today, um, bank is reminding you to pay that EMI,
Right.
and if you don't pay that EMI, someone else will call you, and so on and so forth.
Make all the collections
Make all the
process for you.
collections. Yeah. So
Hmm.
we help banks collect from borrowers.
Right.
And the third company is Aspero,
Hmm.
and that's a B2C sort of a fixed instrument that you spoke about. Um, and Aspero has its own different wings under it. It has a B2C app, it has a B2B2C, and it has a B2B. So that one company does all of these three different things, essentially because it's in the bonds instrument primarily.
Hmm.
Um, So I started with Spocto. I eventually sort of scaled up to manage Aspero as well. And then after, let's say, 6 months or something, I also started managing Yubi.
Hmm.
Um, Now, Spocto is great. I mean, I was like focused. I knew what problem it was, what the environment was. So that was great. Aspero came, that was a very B2C layer to it. So for me,
Yes.
moving from B2B to B2C was little hard. I wouldn't say it was very hard because I had tons of experience in the B2C segment. So a
Hmm.
lot of the learnings that I had over the past many years, I
Hmm.
could easily sort of adapt over here and
Correct.
suggest and guide and mentor and strategize in that perspective. And that also helps, right? Like where you juggle B2C and B2Bs in your career, you're
Yeah.
you're adaptable to different situations, right? So
Correct.
for me, I think that was a biggest help in my through my career. And from Aspero, again, we had a smaller team. I had a team for Aspero, I had a team for Spocto. Then UB happened, where I got to manage the UB's product design as well.
Hmm.
Um, and now it became like a trio, right? A triangle
Right.
where every day from morning till evening, I'll have to keep jumping around the three hoops. But it's also exciting, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't really struggle from context switching a lot. Like I said, the team does a lot of heavy lifting, and I basically get into conversations where there is a context set. So I start,
Hmm.
reading through that or preparing through that 2-3 minutes before the call actually starts. So I prep myself before getting into any conversation. Um, Not diligently all the time, but then to a certain degree when you have to learn new topics and be prepared. But yeah, it is little hard when you have to do that extremely often. Let's say
Hmm.
you have a meeting now, which
Correct.
is with Spocto. The next meeting is with Aspero. The meeting after that is with UB.
Hmm.
That becomes hard. So it's always good to sort of keep a breather, 15-minute breather,
So
right?
that you can
Prepare
set
for,
your mental
yeah,
state first.
correct, right?
Hmm.
And you're not only talking to your designers, you're talking to stakeholders, product
Absolutely.
engineering. So the kind of conversations also very different from company to company.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think always having that 15 minutes break just to sort of realign your thoughts
Hmm.
and contextually be aware, right? What am I
Hmm.
getting into? What do I need to prepare,
Right.
right? And how do I manage this conversation? So I think those kind of things that mechanism will actually help you context switch much more easily. And
Hmm.
over a period of time, you'll become better and better at it. And
Right.
it becomes a habit and it automatically sort of happens. So I think that's how it happened for me. And I've been able to sort of context switch every day.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. I'll go slightly deeper into the products of UB,
Mm,
right? As it's catering to nearly 80% of credit ecosystem in India,
yeah.
catering to all the major banks, let's say, right? Uh, but crafting a solution for those kind of a products also has its own challenges. Uh, let's say we require to design some interfaces for some use cases, right? We first think about that what all information we need to put into the digital medium,
Mm,
whether that's a screen, whether that's a touch handy phone, MacBook, or whatever that might
yeah.
be, right? So always the information comes our head first,
Mm,
right?
mm,
What all information we need to present. But in the case of products in UB, right, it's not about just the information that we need to present.
yeah.
It's basically allowing user to take informed decisions so that their job to be done is getting done
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
And in a way, we also have to make sure that we empowers them rather to basically take the informed decision at
Mm,
the end.
mm,
Help us understand what are those processes or tactics that you have set for your team so that
mm,
they do not just uh, be in that information zone only, but see things beyond information
mm.
to create and craft those solutions for the product.
Yeah. And that's an interesting question. I think um, a lot of designers are exposed to very different kind of problems every day.
Hmm.
Um, it is, and traditionally a lot of, and I think in my career also at a certain point you'd be like, okay, this is what the requirement was, and we just close our eyes, end up designing something, and just send it over.
Yeah.
I think those. that way of working no longer exists today, or I hope it doesn't really exist today. But yeah, end of the day, I think one is when you said empowering the folks that I work with, I think it's all about asking questions, right? Being extremely clear and thorough as to why we're doing what we're doing.
Can you drive with some example
Yeah,
you have
sure.
in mind?
Yeah, so if let's say we're trying to build a product, and the typical process would be okay, the business team has certain requirements, they would give it to the product team. The product team will sort of figure out what needs to be built, how it needs to be built, and also have some level of flows or journeys, and some sort of visualizations in their mind. They sort of sketch it out and things like that. And a lot of cases, the solution is already there. Solution is
Okay.
already prepared, right? Then it comes to the designer, and now designer has to put life to those solution, uh,
Right.
create prototypes, interactive, so and so things. But when a designer actually goes into the crux of the solution, a lot of times we, through experience and through validation, it becomes very evident that that's not the case. That's not the solution at all. In fact, that was not even the problem, right? I think this conversation should never happen at the last.
It
This
should.
realization
Uh,
that, hey, why does the problem exist, right? How did this problem even come? Just because business team or sales team or whichever team told that this is a problem doesn't make it a problem, right? So if you go into understanding from the root, how did the problem arise,
Right.
right? What was the intention behind the problem, right? What was the user trying to do, which is why the problem arose, right?
Right.
These sort of questions typically gets lost in translation.
Because you are just handing over the work you have done to the next team to
Yeah,
take it forward.
correct, right? And that's been the
Process that everyone is
most of the,
following.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think as designers, it becomes extremely critical to take a pause, step back, right? And ask these questions. These questions are not going to be appreciated by many, many people,
Definitely.
right? And these kind of questions, many people won't even have answers to, which
Hmm.
is absolutely fine, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's the best place to be when you don't have answers, because then you're more curious to get answers, right?
Exactly.
And the more curious you are, the better solutions you tend to prepare. So I think this.
Then you will see things from different angle
Exactly,
altogether.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and as designers, we tend to see things from many different angles. Not only
Absolutely.
from a product layer, not only from a business layer, not only from a customer service perspective, but from many different angles. And we want to get to a point where we are, or design is the controlling knob,
Right.
right? Who can get input from different sources. And we're going to sort of like a processing unit. We're going to process all of this, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what is the best output that
Hmm.
can create the most value, right? And
True.
then we can collaborate. Then let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it.
Hmm.
Let's talk about it in a way where whatever we thought that the problem is, and whatever we thought that this is what the solution is going to be, let's flip the whole thing, right?
Is it fair to say that by doing that exercise you will have a functional requirement and foundational requirement?
I mean, yeah, from a,
Cause when you get the let's say any product requirement document
yeah,
from PM or any other stakeholders in a
yeah,
team, you will get what you need to do.
yeah,
Most probably, right?
yeah,
Not always.
yeah.
But when you ask those questions, you will get the foundational requirement. What is the problem? Tell me that first.
True. I think one small um, nuance over there is
Hmm.
requirements typically everyone expects to have a very detailed requirement, right?
Right. Yeah.
The more detailed you are, the more easier for you to build and
Correct.
launch and things like that.
Hmm.
um, when it comes to, let's say, a PID, you spoke about PID, and product sort of prepares this. Imagine that you get a product requirement which is just 2 lines or one paragraph, or just,
Hmm.
let's say, one page, right?
Hmm.
Now you have two things that you can do. Either you look at the one page and you create 10 other pages. You create 10 other pages as designers,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Where you're expanding your own creativity, flexibility, and freedom to make that problem larger and expand that much more in detail. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is that you would only stick to what that one page says,
Hmm.
right? Do what is the what is necessary,
What is needed?
what is needed, right?
Hmm.
No questions asked, very straightforward. Hey, from here, this should happen, this that should happen.
Yeah.
I think that is what needs to change, right?
Hmm.
No matter how much technicality we put across, no matter how much constraints we put across, the mindset is to be curious, to ask questions, and to get answers.
Hmm.
And even if you don't get answers from your stakeholders, you be in the process of getting answers,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Don't expect answers to come to you. Get into the process of getting answers, right?
Hmm. True.
I think when you step into that realm, you start building value,
Hmm.
right? And the more value your stakeholders, your peers, and everyone sees, the more involved you tend to become, and more exciting
Correct.
the problem tends to become, and the more so it's
And
it's a
more context you build so that you can solve the problem in the right way.
yeah,
Because you have started asking questions, so now you have most context
yeah,
of the problem.
exactly, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's extremely important. I think that is what are we solving for,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I mean, we in B2C segments we talk about user first approach, user
Yeah.
centric design, right? What does that mean? You're basically saying what the user feels, we need to feel that, right?
Hmm.
What a user thinks, we need to think about that,
Correct.
right? All of this is so ingrained into our B2C ecosystem that your user's perspective and your user data becomes the most important data in the entire organization, right?
Right.
If your users are not happy, if your CSAT scores are very low, if your NPS scores is very low, you're not going to, that means you're not focused on your customer or your users, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's very easy to get this from a B2C side.
Hmm.
Very easy because you have a live product,
Correct.
customers are using, data is readily available,
Constant feedback.
you have constant feedback. Is there any message on Instagram that you put a post as a brand, if you put a post, first 10 messages are just customer complaints, then
Correct.
you need to fix something,
Yeah.
right? In B2B it's a very different ball game, right? You
Hmm.
don't have data that is so accessible unless you're
Hmm.
like a very large organization who has crazy amount of exposure. But
Hmm.
from a small to medium sized startups, it becomes
It's a
very hard.
struggle.
It's extremely hard.
Hmm.
And as designers, you have to rely a lot on your, forgive me for saying this, gut feeling,
Gut feeling. Yeah.
right? Your intuition, your design principles, your first principles, your what you learned, how you're setting up your thought process, your design thinking. All of these things come into the picture, right?
There, your experience matters a lot, I
It
guess.
does, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So because you don't have a lot of
Data metrics to
data
look at
metrics,
and take
right? You don't have a lot
decisions.
of reference. You don't
Yes.
do a lot of homework,
True.
right? This is where homework comes into the picture, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of homework. And B2B is also, in a certain way, very difficult to get access to customers,
Hmm.
right? And you're talking about other businesses as your
Hmm.
customer. They wouldn't, unless and until they're extremely happy where, and they're also part of your journey, they wouldn't really be available to you to give feedback or all
Correct.
of that,
Correct.
right? And
Sometimes also their compliances also get conflicted.
correct,
So
yes, you can't really talk about it, so we
correct.
can't say it.
Yeah.
But they also don't have incentive to talk about your brand, right?
Absolutely.
So you need to be extremely high value. You need to build high value to your customers where
Hmm.
they feel motivated to bring you up also, talk about you,
Correct.
right? It's more like we are part of your journey,
Exactly.
right? When you scale, I scale,
Huh. Huh.
right? Together. That these sort of topics become very important in a B2B sort of
B2B
segments,
segment.
right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you digressed a little bit, but yeah,
No, definitely. That was so interesting, and you brought out really interesting point here that in a B2B that's a real struggle, and lots of designers are also started working on the problem statement or a solution with their instinct only,
yeah,
right? And if they do not have the right instinct, they are end up creating a product that user might not like.
yeah,
And to understand that users are not liking is also difficult in a way.
yeah.
So you are always have that assumptions that whatever I'm working on and delivering
True.
is going
Yeah,
to work.
yeah. And I think they brought a very good segue here into when you work on intuition and your gut feeling and things like that,
Hmm.
most of the time, and if a lot of the folks would be a single designer or a very small design team working in a company, what happens is that you automatically create a walled garden of sorts,
Correct.
right? Your focus is very narrow,
Yeah.
which means that whatever you design, you believe is the right design,
Correct.
right? Unless and until you actually do a lot of reviews, feedback sessions, critic sessions about your design with other designers who are much more experienced or who have already done this before,
Or
right?
maybe with even product managers also, or tech
Sure.
team also, let's say.
Yeah. Right. So I
Hmm.
think that feedback loop, when you're a very small team,
Right.
right, has to be extremely important, because that's the only way you'll realize that whatever I designed for the first time, the first iteration, is
Not going to work.
absolutely bad, right? And you do 10 iterations to get, and that's a mindset, right? And you'll
Yeah.
have to sort of keep iterating and iterating and iterating, because time is also a constraint,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Everything has to go yesterday, but yeah, I think that's a very different challenge, and yeah,
Makes sense. Makes
yeah.
sense. So let's jump into the nitty-gritties of design teams execution, let's say.
Hmm.
Since Yubi has entire group has a lots of product catering to this fixed return segment, to this credit and lending segment, and all of those, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, all of this product has a one common thing in nature, which is data, visualization, and content.
Hmm.
In order to set up the design language in a very functional manner, if we say the design system,
Yeah.
it needs a lot of hierarchical set structure so that designer can utilize it and create the visuals out of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? Help us understand, in order to set up this design system and maintain it so that
Hmm.
it can help product to basically establish the evolving needs,
Yeah.
right? What are those processes that your team is following so that it's always fresh, it's always supporting the product?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, as for every company, design system becomes a core aspect to designing any product.
Hmm.
Um, as one of the most important, I believe, because I think at UB especially, you have not only, I mean, in overall 5 different companies, 3 companies that I'm currently managing, there's a lot of dependency on bringing one language that you have at a group level, right?
Exactly.
Across all of these brands, and that's a huge challenge to sort of adhere. I personally sort of experienced this at Walmart also, because Walmart has so many different companies within the Walmart chain, and we had many different design systems.
Okay.
For every market we had design system. Imagine that, right? You have
Every single market.
every, like in Mexico you would have a design system, in Canada you would have a design system, and that would, and Walmart has been acquiring companies, right? So that
That also comes
that
with their own design
design system,
languages.
right? All of that, right?
Huh.
And then they introduced a living design system, which is like one unified design system across all the brands.
Hmm.
um, and I think even till today, that process of getting it implemented across all of that brands is happening,
Still going on.
still going
Okay.
on. It's a big challenge. So, but strategically, if you look at it, right,
Hmm.
why do we need to do something like that? Why can't every brand live the way they are and evolve the way they need to be, right?
Hmm.
I think a short answer to that is to bring
Hmm.
consistency to the brand itself, right? Especially when you are also known through a parent organization,
Right.
right? Every organization below the parent needs to sort of have some sort of connection to the parent brand, right?
Correct. Correct.
The most design led connection that you can build is through design systems, right? So in UB we had a very similar problem. In fact, couple of 2.5 years ago, we didn't really have a design system. Like,
Hmm.
designers were working on the designs based on how the input was and what they need to deliver, which is why the product had a very different experience from a UI standpoint. um, and UB product and Spocto and Aspero had very different languages. They didn't really
Hmm.
had anything connecting the dots. So that was a challenge.
Hmm.
So, and then we specifically had a team for design system, right? We call them the craft team.
Okay.
And this team focuses on building the design system from scratch, enabling all of these brands to exist. Um,
And their core job is to maintain the design
is
system
to build the
only.
design system, to also serve for all the needs for each of these brands,
Mm-hmm.
right? When it comes to, so for example, let's say you have a B2C product,
Right.
you have to build a particular component, right?
Mm.
This component is specifically catering to the B2C use cases, right?
Mm.
But when you bring a B2B use case, in
Correct.
this case, three other companies,
Yeah.
right? The use case starts expanding.
Correct.
It's the same component, but it's very different use cases, right?
Mm.
So as a design system owner, and greatly, we have a really good focus team on design systems. So these guys have to focus on making sure that this component is so scalable and flexible that it can solve problems not only for a B2C, for B2B, and for B2B2C, for all of these markets, right? And
Within a single design system.
within a single design system. And in fact,
Great.
the way I looked at this is that it shouldn't only be restricted to product design. Your design system should be flexible enough to adhere for marketing, adhere
Hmm.
to sales decks and collaterals and those activities,
Absolutely.
and your product marketing and the product.
Because at the end of the day, designers need to work on those things as well.
Yeah,
So if it is built in a way that it can be reused,
yeah,
it can also optimize the effort at the end.
yeah. That is one way to look at it. And from an operational standpoint,
Hmm.
you that you have one resource and you sort of utilize as per the needs,
Correct.
right? The other way, from a customer experience standpoint, you will start having a very cohesive brand value that you're building, right?
Definitely.
When there is a customer who comes and looks at your, let's say, your LinkedIn ad, for example, it looks in a certain way, right?
Correct.
When they click on it, they go to a website, it should look similar,
Hmm.
right? And when you say, okay, I want to try a demo or I want to try a product or whatever, when you're actually trying the product, you know that okay, all of this are connected, they feel same, they look same, they are from the same family, right?
Correct.
I think that perception of giving a product experience end to end, all the
Hmm.
way from your initiation where you're generating leads to your delivering of your customer service, for example, right? Even when you call up to customer service, all of that should be integrated. All of that should have a very similar language, right? The tone of voice should be similar. The look and
Hmm.
feel should be similar. The consistency, and that's where brands are created, right?
Right.
The consistency was what makes the brand, and the consistency is what is going to improve the value of the brand, right?
Definitely.
Let's say today from outside it looks amazing, a building, but when you go inside it looks very different. You're never going
Then
to
you basically feel that disconnect
Yeah,
that
you're never
what
going to
I
talk about the inside part. You'll always talk about the outside part,
outside part. Yeah.
right? कि
Yeah.
बाहर से अच्छा दिख रहा है. When you
Correct.
get into it, it might be very, very different, right?
Hmm.
But if you seamlessly flow from out to in
Hmm.
and out again, right,
Hmm.
even without realizing, right? You feel like, oh, I never left this place.
Yeah.
I was always
It's
here,
changing, but very
very
gradually.
gradually,
Yeah.
right? I think that's the major impact of a design system.
And how big is the design system catering team?
It's very small. It's super focused, highly competent folks of just 5 members.
Okay.
We have motion design, we have design systems, we have UI specialists who helps us be better at UI and get better at user interfaces.
Hmm.
So we have these sort of specialized craft members within the team,
Right.
and they help us sort of enable our solutions to come to life and make it better. But I think what we some of our challenges that we're facing today
Hmm.
also, right? So from day one, which is 2.5 years ago, when we launched our design system, um, it was a version 1,
Hmm.
right? And version 1, and like every other product, you are chasing deadlines, right? You have wanted it to be ready yesterday. That sort of a concept. Even for a design system is a very simple thing, because you have an entire suite of products, you have entire suite of product designers who are waiting for your design system to come
Correct.
so that they can get enabled,
Hmm.
right? So it becomes that, okay, you have so much of pressure, you have a lot of people depending on you, right? You have a lot
Hmm.
of designers depending on you. You need to build something,
Hmm.
right? It need not be perfect. No design system today is perfect. Every design
Absolutely.
system has some of the other bugs that they're
It's an
still solving.
ongoing
It's a
thing.
living thing, right?
It's a
It's
living thing.
always evolving. So version 1, we got it out, and that sort of set some standard to our product experiences. Then after some time we did version 2. So we kept on refining it, right? There was a lot of feedback that you have to get from the people who are using the components, themselves. So
Yeah.
a lot of feedback cycles saying, hey, it doesn't solve this problem, it doesn't serve this use case.
Hmm.
Create a backlog, start implementing on the version 2. So we went V1 to V2 quickly. And from V2, today we are actually in V3.
Okay.
And um, V1 to V2 was a very small shift. Some of the hygiene level fixes, those kind of things. V2 to V3 was a huge jump, because even as designers, product designers, they came back saying that, hey, this looks completely new, completely better.
Hmm.
It makes our designs much more better.
Which were those areas that you have improved in the from V2 to V3?
Yeah, I think a lot of things to do with colors, especially,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think choosing the right colors, because you not have one brand now, you have so many
Multiple
brands,
brands under
right?
one
Aspero is a
umbrella.
green focus, Yubi is little orange focus, and your Spocto, which is a little orange, purplish sort of focus. So a lot of this focus, and we also have something that will have to bring in some sense of professionalism, security, the safe, the
Hmm.
trustworthiness. Colors are associated to that, so blue
Yeah.
became also a color that we wanted to look at. So with a lot of this, how do we build something that can cater to these different
Use cases.
brands?
Huh.
So we came up with this interchangeable tokenization sort of format, which
Right.
means that your primary color for your brand one, if you just change the hex value tokenized way, the primary color for brand two can also be incorporated easily, right?
Hmm.
You have themes, if I could call it, but the foundation, the building blocks, the Lego pieces are the same,
Same.
right?
Hmm.
Maybe instead of using a square red, you're using a square green, right?
Hmm.
Some of the things we have to definitely change,
Yeah.
but then how does the square look? That is the same thing, right?
Framework remains same.
Frame
Values just
values
change.
just change, and to a
Hmm.
very less extent, right? Values don't
Right.
change that. Okay, from a sharp edge corner buttons, we'll have a full curved buttons.
Rounded.
So
Yeah.
much we're not going
Hmm.
to change. We very slightly colors, maybe.
Hmm.
um yeah, primarily just colors, to be very honest. I
Hmm.
think everything else, we've come to a point where we have standardized the entire experience, so that the evolution of the design system can be focused into more nuances,
Right.
right? So we are currently in V3, and to be very open as well, V3 is also something that we are making it better and better.
Right.
And this has a lot of dependency on development team also, because design system, you can design the way you want it, but it has to get developed the way it's supposed to. And you need the individual development pods from all of these companies to incorporate your design system,
They
right?
should
That's a big,
also complement the
yeah.
way design system have set up.
Correct. It's not like they can go and custom build it, right?
Correct.
Which is let's say a thought
Again, a
that
broken
every,
structure.
yeah, broken structure, right? So
Yeah.
we are in a phase where we are trying to address all of these issues. One,
Hmm.
which is refining the design system to a point where all the designers feel happy about it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We cater to most of the use cases that are there. Second is to get it developed in the right way,
Hmm.
right? If I've designed in a particular manner, I want the interaction to happen. The the code also should be saying exactly the same thing. 99%, if
Correct.
not 100, has to be the same thing. That's the second problem that we're trying to address today. The third problem is getting so many engineering pods. We have so lot of engineering pods across the companies, right?
Hmm.
All of these engineering pods needs to be groomed. Some KTs has to happen, some training has to happen in terms of how
Right.
to utilize this design system that is going to increase their efficiency, is going to save time, save effort,
Definitely.
right?
And in the
um,
experimentation zone, you need to have that efficiency.
yeah, absolutely, right. So I think these three are the biggest challenges that I feel
Hmm.
any design system today is probably going through it. We are going through that as well. And yeah, and we've come to a point where we're going to be hyper collaborative to enable this, because we want to see the benefits. We want to reap the benefits out of doing so much of good work.
Right.
I think that's in progress, and hopefully it'll turn out really good. And there's also plans to make it an open source design system, where
That would
any
be a
other,
great
and it's very
add-on.
fintech focused, right? Because we're solving for a lot of this financial
Products.
products.
Yeah.
it becomes easier for any other financial company or product to also
Leverage the
leverage all of
same
these things. Yeah,
structure.
right.
Yeah.
So that's the goal, that's the idea, and we want to make it a little public source as well.
Hmm.
And hopefully that happens soon.
For sure, for sure. That will be a great add-on for the entire
Yeah.
community, I would say. Let's zoom into one important aspect of all the product offerings UB is currently offering in the different segment in the finance domain only.
Hmm.
There is a product in UB which has to do with risk assessment, which has to do with slight research sort of a use cases, which
Hmm.
also has to do with analytics also.
Yeah.
All of those things has to do with data heavy execution.
Hmm.
And when we come to a data heavy execution, there's a pattern that we need to identify and then need to take a informed decisions on top.
Yeah.
But now we see AI is more capable than us to do those jobs.
Yeah.
Are there any use cases UB is leveraging AI to do it, or are there any enhancement is done by AI in that sense?
Absolutely. I think over the past year, AI has become the hot topic
Yeah.
in every organization. And I think at UB, we've actually taken that very seriously in terms of making sure we have one, if not two levels deeper
Hmm.
when it comes to trying to implement some of the AI capabilities within our workflows, right? Um, so you spoke about analytics, a lot of data heavy products that we have. Absolutely. Some of the journeys and shed some light into a particular journey that will probably, um, you know, bring in some context of how we are using AI. So let's say and I'll take a little metaphorical example. Let's say
Yeah.
there's a person to whom you need to give some money, like as a loan,
Yeah.
right? Now you don't know who this person is,
Hmm.
so you typically wouldn't trust this person, right? You,
Correct.
you want, hey, you want 1 lakh, take. You wouldn't be like that. You say, okay, who are you?
Hmm.
What do you do? Right? What's your background? Where are you
Right.
from? What is like? How is your salary looking like? Have you earned enough before? Can I trust you? How do I trust you? Where I can
So
give you
that
the
I can
money?
assure that my money will come back at
Exactly, right?
with interest,
With
let's say.
interest, with whatever, right? But the trust is very important.
Hmm.
Now, like that person, you might have 100,000 people who are coming and asking you for 1 lakh, for example, right?
Right.
You can't go and trust 100,000 people, right? You need to pick and choose
Hmm.
who's the most trustworthy, right? Who I can actually depend on getting my money back to me. In this context, when you have so many people that you can potentially lend to and you need to pick and choose, you're highly dependent on a particular analytics,
Correct.
right? When I say analytics, most about who this person is, what is their background, and
Hmm.
those sort of information. And if you're talking about one person, let's say you have 10 pages, but if you're talking about a company, you'll have 100 pages. If you're talking about a larger company, you'll have like 500 pages. So it becomes more and more detailed
Yeah.
as in when the person who's borrowing becomes larger and larger, right?
Correct.
So in this context, you'll have to deal with a lot of data and you'll end up actually analyzing a lot of this data.
Hmm.
So what we are trying to do is we're trying to sort of build an ecosystem where the AI sort of looks at all of this information, which is in abundance, right?
Hmm.
Summarizes to you at a certain point, gives you insights,
Hmm.
and tells you clearly, hey, out of this 100,000 people that you saw, right? This person or these 100 people
Hmm.
are going to be the sure bet that they'll give you back your money. You'll not have any concerns because their financial look strong, right? Their
Yeah.
business is great. They've been paying their GSTs on time. They've been
That
doing
credit
their
score
credit
is
score is
good.
great, right? Their
Huh.
profile is great. Their directors, the board, everything is all great. You should give it to them,
Hmm.
right? That sort of recommendation. It's like actually some sort of person sitting at the back and saying, "Hey, I'll do all the hard work. I'll just tell you who to invest on. You just do it," right?
Yeah.
That is the kind of feeling we want to bring to our customers, where the AI is going to shorten the amount of effort by a huge degree, right? This is like, just imagine, right? If one person has to
Hmm.
sit and look at so many profiles and dig
Yeah.
deeper, it's just
Yeah.
going to be too hectic. Today, that's what it is, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
So are you allowing your customers to set the right criterias to identify those customers
yeah.
to lend money, or you are setting behalf of them?
So every customer or every bank today have their own policies, right? They have their
Hmm.
own mechanism to validate or evaluate a particular borrower, right?
Exactly.
And
Okay.
we have made a system where that particular customer can customize the platform the way
Okay.
they want it, right?
Hmm.
So if they want to look at, let's say, out of 100 parameters, if they want to look at the 1 to 20,
Hmm.
customize that, you'll get
You're good to
you're
go.
good to go.
Hmm.
If company B wants to look at the borrower of, from 20 to 50
Hmm.
parameters, right? They can customize all of that. So it becomes very personalized at a particular manner,
Right.
because every lender or a bank today have their own set of policies, their own set of method of working, method of doing business,
Hmm.
which is why it becomes very important that we don't really customize for every brand, but they customize it for themselves,
For
right?
themselves. So
So
you are enabling them to do
enabling
it.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it becomes personalized as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that's one way that AI is sort of we're leveraging.
Okay.
I'll not go very deeper into it because for obvious
Yeah.
reasons. But yeah, the other side of it on Spocto, luckily we have this on the marketing side, which is why I can talk about it. So we have something called as the call center um, conversations. So let's say you have a loan and you haven't paid for a month or so.
Hmm.
Um, Apart from your SMS and emails that you're getting, you would also receive a call from the
Right.
bank. One of the executive from the bank would call you and say, "Sir, you haven't paid this. Can what's happening? Can you pay? When can you pay?" All of that, right?
Hmm.
Now, this particular call, when a conversation is happening between a call center agent and the customer, there's so many things can go right. There's so many things that can go wrong, right?
Correct.
Because we don't know what the customer is going through. He might be going through a very bad time in his life or her life,
Whatever the case might
whatever
be.
the concerns might be, right? All of these conversations can happen in that time frame with that
Hmm.
call, right?
Hmm.
Now, if AI can actually read or understand what conversation, and we're talking about India, a country like India, where you have very different languages, very different dialects, very different expressions of feelings and
Cultures
cultures, all of
also.
that, right?
Yeah.
So if in that sort of constraint and in that sort of exposure, if you can build a product which uses the AI technology to enable some level of understanding of what the conversation was all about, right?
Hmm.
um, and we're talking about collections, and it's um, not a bright picture to paint, because
Correct.
you might have conversations that you wouldn't want to hear, right?
Correct.
Someone is giving gali to someone else, like, that sort of a thing. It can go all over. You don't really can't really control, right?
Hmm.
But let's say an agent or a call center agent talks in a rude way
Hmm.
or uses some words which are not supposed to be used, doesn't treat the customer the right way, right?
Hmm.
Today, there's not a lot of ways that you can sort of capture that instance
Right.
and penalize that person for that activity, right? AI sort of helps you do all of this. Right?
Hmm.
If it can analyze your voice, if it can analyze your conversation, it can figure out where you went wrong,
Hmm.
right? What you said was wrong, and if you've not gone to an extreme end where your job is at risk, then it can also help you become better at having better conversations,
Correct.
right?
And even for the manager also, this data points are becoming really eye-opening one,
Yeah,
right? Because by understanding those data points, they can actually mentor those team members so that they
yeah,
can have a good conversation with the client.
yeah. And especially in the financial sector, it's compliance driven, right?
Correct.
Which means that you don't have a second chance.
Hmm.
If you've said something wrong, you can't say sorry, I'll take it back and I'll say something else.
It's gone.
It's gone, right? It's already recorded. You've said it to a customer and
Correct.
you'll have to face the brunt of it. The best way is to capture such instances, because a lot of these
Hmm.
instances just goes unnoticed,
Right.
right? And acknowledge the customer for facing this and sort of get into that cycle. Second is to train and enable agents to do a better job at having these conversations, right?
Hmm.
Rather than having a very robotic, linear manner of conversations, to have a very humanistic perspective, right?
Right. Right.
Um, I personally have seen, very different conversations with brands that are who care for your customers versus brands that don't care for your customers. I think the feeling of robots versus feeling of humans is
Hmm.
clearly distinguished there,
Right.
right? And we're trying to sort of give the feeling of humans with enabling the artificial
Robots.
intelligence, right? So I think that merger has to happen very thoughtfully, because then we don't want it to be always about robots or machine doing the talking.
Correct.
Because especially in India, it's like, I really don't know about the other markets, but in India, it's extremely important to be human,
Hmm.
because we have so many different kind of cultures, so many different type of people, different walks of life, different backgrounds.
Yeah.
We can't put one blanket statement for everyone, right? So it becomes even more challenging. How do you bring
Absolutely.
the humanistic, emotional perspective while having conversations, like be it digital, be it call, be it even in person?
Hmm.
I think that's where, in market like India, it is extremely important to think about the AI part a little bit more deeper than providing a very blanket sort of a solution.
Hmm. Here and
Right?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense, Arpit. We come to the very last part of the episode. Uh, uh, Help us understand, if you are looking for hiring a mid-level folks in your team,
Yeah.
what are those criteria that you see primarily uh, when you are basically assessing a candidate?
Um, I mean, I think today in this day and age, there are a lot more designers that were there 10 years ago. Um, that also gives a great opportunity to talk to different kinds of people who are in the
Hmm.
design field, right? In fact, today, if you see, engineers turn into designers,
Designers, yeah.
marketing folks turn into designers. You have designers, artists turning into designers,
Hmm.
right? Designers turning into, you know, like yourself, for example.
Hmm.
Uh,
Entrepreneurs, let's say.
yeah, entrepreneurs, right? So
Yeah.
it becomes um, it becomes a very big challenge, because you have so much of influx of designers into the system, right?
Hmm.
Um, for me, I think there are very few parameters I would put when I'm looking at designers, especially in the mid level, that I would probably be hiring for. Um, because at a certain level, that the person's skills are pretty much tested already, right?
Right.
Someone with 5 6 years of experience, they've already gone through a certain step up in terms of skill development, right?
Hmm.
Be it on the UX front or the UI front. So a lot of evaluation I wouldn't really put on that, or weightage I wouldn't really put on the UX UI part.
Right.
I'll actually put a lot of weightage on the mindset part, right? When I say mindset, it's a lot to do with how your behavioral aspects of a designer is. What's the motivation?
Hmm.
What kind of inspirations and aspirations that person has, right?
Hmm.
Um, what actually gets them out of the bed every day and come to work and do something and go home, right?
Yeah.
How do they feel about this?
Hmm.
Um, these sort of things are a little bit more important for me, right? What kind of culture do you see building, right? What kind of collaboration do you see? What kind of teamwork do you see? All of these, which are very mindset oriented rather than a skill set oriented, I
Hmm.
would probably put more weightage over
On the
there.
behavior and mindset.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously it's an interview process, so you have other folks who are doing due diligence on the other side.
Right.
But when it comes to me, I actually look at the mindset part a lot.
Hmm.
um, because at the end of the day, if you look at a team is always a multi-person
Function.
function, right?
Yeah.
Which means every time you lack something, you have another person who will excel at it, right?
True.
And if you lack at it, you will always look at the other person and say, how do I do this as
Hmm.
good as this person,
Yeah.
right? That's a kick in the butt, saying I need to do something better, I need to be better, right?
Yeah.
That attitude and that expression of thought is very very important. That way, you're not only showcasing yourself that you want to be better, you're also showcasing to the world that you want to be better. And when people look at someone who wants to be better and they strive to be better every day, they only want to enable them.
Yeah.
No one is going to say, hey, you want to be better? No, don't be
No.
better. How can I help you? That becomes a conversation, right?
Correct.
But just putting it out, saying that I want to be better, I want to do better, very genuinely. I know, like in interviews and things like that, we always tend to put a little bit more masala wherever it is not needed. But genuinely, as human beings, if we want to do better, be better, and also enable others to be better, right? And it's a community of sorts, right? We always we cannot always thrive alone. We always thrive in groups. So
Correct.
keeping that as a core in your mindset, I think that is something that I would, for me, it is a very inspirational thing to see in people, and that sort of gets me interested in having conversations with them and working with them and getting better.
Makes sense. And for you guys, if you guys feel that there is something that you have in mind which we haven't covered in this conversation, let us know in the comment section below and we'll get it answered by Arpith. So yeah, Arpith, thanks for joining today. It was really interesting conversation.
Thank you for having me, Darshan. Thank you. I loved it. It was very exciting, very nice, and I hope we get to interact again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our main goal with this podcast is to bring insightful conversation to help you grow in your career by inviting leaders who are driving impact at scale. If you find this episode useful, make sure you subscribe because that only helps us to invite incredible guests for the future episodes. And in case you have any suggestions about who we should invite and what all topic we should cover, let us know in the comment section below. We are always listening to make sure we deliver exactly what you are looking for.